Hello, my name is Adam, and I'm going to be talking about the rural Native American population, particularly the Navajo Nation inside the United States. So why is it important to learn about this population? Well, one, it's a very largely ignored population in society. It's also underrepresented in local and federal governments. Uh, and they often lack modern amenities such as electricity and water, and even just well-paved roads that could limit access to proper health care. Because of that as well, there are not a lot of healthcare facilities on Navajo reservations because of the rural population, and because of the kind of cultural differences, particularly language difference that we'll be discussing later. In regards to Navajo language, it's only spoken by 175,000 people, according to NavajoPeople.org. Not very many people are able to translate the language, making communication and healthcare difficult. Also, according to an article in PT in Motion, Navajo children are not taught to identify single body parts, such as ears or noses. Um, that's one of their beliefs, that if you separate the body, then it's not whole and therefore it's not in harmony. And if you try to ask a child to identify any kind of single part of their body in regards to like pain or something like that, they will not understand it, and maybe even parents or grandparents who are in the treatment room might actually find it offensive. That was actually the case for a particular doctor, who was trying to do a simple assessment where the child was trying to put a head on a doll, and it did not go well for him, and he got lectured a little bit on it. But because of those different, between the language and the different beliefs in the society, that certainly makes it a little bit more difficult in terms of treating the Navajo people. So what are three things that healthcare providers can do to kind of help with that stuff? Well, one of them is maybe learn a few greetings in the Navajo language. That'll allow people to establish a little bit more trust. If you have the capabilities and even the time to do so, maybe being able to further learn the language so that way you can communicate a little bit more. And I think just people who speak different languages, if they see that you're trying to, then typically that means they're going to trust you a little bit more and establish that rapport. Pardon me. So another thing that we can do as healthcare providers is approach with an open mind and realize that you may make some mistakes in regards to their beliefs. It's going to happen. It's somewhat impossible to know all the beliefs of an entire culture that you haven't grown up in. And even sometimes in your own culture, you might end up being caught up in things that are not culturally acceptable either. So that being said, just know that you're going to make some mistakes. Approach those mistakes with an open mind and a sense of curiosity to kind of learn from it. And don't just give up learning on it, and then maybe abandon a certain population just because you don't get it. Because that just means that you're not actually there to provide proper health care for the people. Another thing that you can end up doing is just do some basic research on cultural practices and beliefs. Nowadays, with the use of the internet, you'd be just considered ignorant if you don't end up looking this stuff up. All of it's available on the internet. You can get a good idea of what some of those cultural beliefs and traditions are. So, the cultural elements that are different from me to the Navajos is that I only speak English. I'm also taught to identify the different parts of the body. So if my shoulder hurts, I can say my shoulder hurts, my ear, my nose, that sort of thing. And that is what's typically considered the dominant way to communicate in the area that I live. Because I speak the dominant language in the United States, I can communicate my healthcare needs more easily. I also have easier access to healthcare because I live in a city as opposed to a rural area such as the Navajo Nation. Both of those things just make healthcare a little bit easier for me than other people. Now, I know when I used to work over at UNMH, they would have Navajo translators, and we used to get quite a few people from the Navajo Nation that would come all the way down here. But it was also very difficult for people to travel all the way down to UNMH from northwestern New Mexico. I mean, that was about a 3 to 4 hour drive. And if you don't have a vehicle, or a reliable vehicle for that matter, that can be quite challenging to do. When I have the opportunity to work with a Navajo-speaking patient, I would request a virtual translator. At my clinic, I do outpatient physical therapy. It would likely be an extra cost to the clinic, but I think it would allow for better outcomes, better communication, and just really developing that rapport a little bit more. In regards to improving healthcare for the Navajo Nation, ultimately, I think, building healthcare clinics is a must. But if that isn't an option because of the poor living areas over there, lacks of access to electricity and water and such, then pop-up clinics might be the next best thing. And the thing is, like, the pop-up clinics, they're going to have to be consistent, right? People are going to have to know when to expect them to be there in order to them to plan out, because someone might have to go pick up grandma, take them to the healthcare clinic, and that sort of thing. And at those pop-up clinics, it's going to be really important to have, a translator there, but any documentation that needs to be filled out needs to be in the language of the local people there too. You can't be handing out HIPAA forms that are only in English and expect a translator to translate all those forms. It just doesn't establish a good sense of trust if somebody's doing that stuff. So it's all building rapport, being consistent, and ultimately providing the best healthcare available for rural populations such as the Navajo Nation. Anyway, thank you very much. See you later.